All right, looks like this thing is starting to stream. Just confirm something here. What's up? This is Dave. This is What's Up Dave, my daily stream where I catch up with my friends on the internet. And it's March 21st, I think, Wednesday. It's about 7:20 p.m. and I am getting a late start to, well, this is the end of a long day. It's been pretty productive, actually. Some of the things I want to talk about are progress on diet and exercise, the shift in my blogging focus, and then obsolete 3D printers, some mystery candy hamburgers that my friend Sid ate on today's podcast recording session, and other things that are in the blog post. Let me switch to the chat view and see what's going on. Oops, my Oxcam is down. Let me fix that real quick. Oops. Okay, there we go. So first, diet and exercise. If you've been following my blog posts recently, I have had the insight that my diet was giving me brain fogginess, and it's possibly related to having type 2 diabetes. I had not been thinking about my diet too much until this past weekend when I was having this really, really difficult time just motivating myself to do stuff. And I had assumed it was me just being lazy and having character flaws and that kind of stuff. But that's probably it. I think after a couple days or 3 days or so of being on the improved diet, where I'm not eating any carbs or very, very few carbs, and getting exercise, my head is much clearer. Today was actually one of the most productive days I've had in a long time. And just by watching what I was eating, making sure I wasn't eating too much any sugar, and just every in the morning getting my heart rate going for even just like a tiny amount of time, 15 minutes in my case. I've had a pretty good day. I had been writing in my blog post. I was catching up with several topics. Let's just switch over here. So today's blog post, again, I'm doing three days a week instead of 5 days a week in my renewed blogging emphasis. So I'm doing the live streams on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and also doing a blog post Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So yes, diet is good. A few interesting things that I noticed was this water garden, a self-cleaning fish tank and garden ecosystem. So you can see this picture down here. Maybe this other one shows. Oops, that's not it. Let's back up. I thought I had two more than one picture. It's probably in Lightroom. Yeah, let's take a look at this picture. So you can see here that there's a fish in a tank, and at the top there's herbs growing. This is an example of something called aquaponics. And here it says, fish feeds the plants, plants clean the water. So the fish poop provides nutrition for the plants, and they grow better. So it's kind of a interesting idea to have an herb garden / fish tank. Personally, I don't like taking care of fish, so it's not the sort of thing for me, but it's pretty cool. Some other things I talked about today were this is a Mod T 3D printer, which I got for $150 on a Kickstarter several years ago. I just found out today that this printer has been discontinued, and the company is folding. Or in fact, they already shut down operations in February. So they do have a final firmware update I can download that will disable the Wi-Fi functionality and make it work only through USB and desktop software. So I might be able to still get some use out of it. You know, for $150, I was able to explore 3D printing and play around with this stuff. And this is one of the better looking units that are available. And $150 is like super cheap. You know, usually to get a decent one, I mean, these printers were selling for like $300 after they released. And I would say to get a decent printer now, you're paying about $300 to $600 anyway. So from this, I got a taste of 3D printing, and I think I'm done with it because I don't think for now I'm going to be doing anything exciting with it. Another thing I was looking at was reorganizing my mixer. This is the mixer here, the one I'm using for the podcasts right now. And I'm just going to build a little shelf that covers all these things up. So Jacob in the chat room was mentioning he had gotten a new mixer, an AGO6, which is, where is it? This mixer. And that was getting me thinking, like, what should I do to clean up my mixer setup? This looks like a nice mixer. It's completely bus powered, this one that Jacob got. And so you don't need an external power supply. You just plug it in on the go. It sounds like it might be convenient for a more mobile setup. So let's see, we talked about diet, exercise, blogging focus. Oh, blogging focus thoughts. Community instead of content. So one of the things that I'm doing is I've resumed my blogging. And I used to blog much more frequently from 2005 to 2007, let's say, almost every day, sometimes several times a day. I slowly fell out of the habit because I felt I was starting to repeat myself in content, and I really didn't know what I was doing with it either. Where did I want it to go? And I still have that problem. But I think an idea that I'm playing with, and you can see this if you look at my current blog posts, is that it may not be so much the content of the blog posts that's important, but it's the idea of setting up some kind of community. The continuity of me just talking about my day, that might be enough. The periodic chance to check in with somebody and see what they're doing, and maybe compare it to what you're doing, and just generally being interested in what people are doing. That might be enough to establish some kind of platform for empowerment of some kind. This isn't about making a product. This is more about creating a certain kind of vibe that other people can are comfortable with. You know, I really want to be involved with encouraging people to make things, to take small risks. And I'm not here to go rah rah and be your life coach, but I'm here just to show that I'm representing this segment of the population who is trying to do stuff, trying to make things, trying to overcome their own failings, and that's not bad, you know. Yes, there's no reason really not to do it. To be more accepting, to be encouraging, to be ambitious but not overly demanding. Maybe that's what it is. So I'm just playing around with this, establishing, my blogging presence as just a presence, not a product. That's a very interesting idea to me. I'm not sure where it's going to go, or if it's going to really take off, or if it'll really pay off. But it's what I'm doing for now. For March, we'll figure out whether it was worth it or not, and whether or not it's a sustainable thing. I think already having dropped down from the 5-day-a-week to the 3-day-a-week thing has been good just for managing my energy, because I am doing quite a lot of things every day. For example, I wrote a blog post this morning. I did the gym routine. I did some work. Did some talking in the chat room. We were talking about roles. In the chat room, there's a number of different roles you can choose for yourself. Like, I'm an engineer, I'm an educator, I'm a coder, I'm a gamer, I'm a foodie, those kind of things. And I got the idea of combining that with a multi-class kind of a badge system, kind of like the scouts have these merit badges that you can get. And I've always kind of wanted my own merit badges, but I've never wanted to join the scouts. So I created a document that's describing these multi-class skills. So this is a public document I've been inviting people to edit. I think there's supposed to be comments here too. I don't see where they are. Oh yeah, so Susan was leaving some comments. So here's the roles we have now. But what would be a multi-class system? So these would be attributes. A multi-class system in a role-playing game system would be, instead of saying, I am a fighter and my experience points go to making me a better fighter, a multi-class character system is that you pick up skills. So you could have a fighting skill, but you might be able to have a magic skill too, and you develop both of them by doing actions within that skill. So your fighter rank goes up the more you fight. Your magic rank goes up the more you do magic, and so on. Like maybe you're a baker, or you're a thief, or any of these things. Instead of a role that's comprised of many different skills, there are skills that you acquire that combine together and make the unique character that you are. I think Skyrim, if you want a video game example, is an example of a game that uses a skill attribute based character class system. So anyway, the idea is if I could make a bunch of skills, like for example, the coder skill might have a pattern recognition skill, a modeling skill, a transcoding skill. I'm just start making this up. Then I could make cool looking badges for each of these. What's a model skill look like? So I just want to make a whole bunch of stickers, basically, but based around the idea that there are concrete skills that you can acquire and focus on, and also there are what I'm calling a mastery indicator. What's an example of something you can do that counts as an achievement that develops your skill along a particular path, or develops the magnitude of your ability along a particular skill path. So basically, I'm just nerding out on classifying the things that I do, such that I can make cool badges. That would tie into my illustration desire to like draw cool things. But I didn't have like any ideas on what I wanted to draw. Let's see. Is there anything else to talk about? Talked about the obsolete printer. These mystery candy hamburgers. Like today, we'd recorded 3 podcasts. Me and my friend Sid. So if you go to the, I wish I could go for this. So if I go to YouTube videos, okay, this is the link to it. I think I already posted this in the description. So I was recording this in Reason. So we did 3 of these things. We just randomly talk about stuff. Ostensibly, it's about being a creative professional in a small New England city. But we end up talking about movies and video games and just stuff that's on our mind. Share the work that we're doing. This is part of the overall community building work, I think. I talked about Sid with this idea today. Yeah, I'm not sure you really bought into it. I can kind of see this being as a vehicle for gathering more creative people together and sharing your life experiences in a supportive and interesting manner, where you're not selling out and where you're still authentic and that whole thing. So that was what was going on today. I don't think there's anything else for show and tell. Oh, I can show you what the little hamburgers were. So like Sid, he was like, hey, it started to sugar crash at the end of the session. So I had gotten out these little cookies. So these hamburger things, they're about the size of like a nickel, I would say, or maybe even a quarter. Oops. And since these are these are sugary, sweet things, and since I can't eat that right now, I just gave them to him, and it seemed to help him recover from his low blood sugar. There is one more thing. I don't know if you can see it behind me in the camera. Let me go grab it. It is. I should really show this off more tomorrow when the light is better. This is a Max plushie of Sam and Max. And yeah, just a picture of the label over here. So this is one of my favorite comics. And now I have something that I didn't know existed. So this makes me very happy. But we'll open this tomorrow. He'll stay in his protective plastic bag until the light is better. So I think that's really it for today's What's Up, Dave. Today was a pretty productive day. I was able to do some work on defining, for the JavaScript type stuff, I'm trying to come up with a unified system for handling events of all kinds. And there's a lot of things that act like events. So event-driven programming and asynchronous programming is one of those more difficult things to do in code. They're hard to debug. They're hard to set up. There's a lot of boilerplate involved with it usually. And if there's a way I can make, instead of having 14 different ways of doing roughly the same thing, if there was one or two very clear ways of doing something, and I just adhere to that in our code base, that should go a long way to simplifying some of the code that we have to write. And it makes it possible to unify state across different web apps running on the network, and just more simply create ways of triggering responses to actions that are detectable. I think with most programmers, like a programmer like from my era is used to doing what's called procedural programming, in which you write a list of steps that you want to have executed. Whereas these days, you're really writing more event-driven stuff with like when something happens, I want you to do this. And another example of that is when something happens, I want you to do this. And when that is finished running, I want you to do this next thing. Wait till that's done, then do this next thing. While you're doing that, I want you to do this other thing at the same time. And when both that thing done and this chain of other things are done, I want you then to do this one last thing and clean up. And in JavaScript, it's a pain in the ass to do, especially as asynchronous stuff. If you're involved with like things like I want you to, well, if you have, it's like threaded programming basically. You have multiple chains of tasks that are executing one after the other, or they need to run one after the other because one can't start until the other one is completely finished, let's say processing a huge load of data. And at the same time, you have multiple threads of execution running. Like one thing is rendering the world in the background, and another thing is doing the AI. How do you synchronize those things? And then like network connections too. How do you tell one web app to talk to another web app, wait for its response, and then continue? How do you synchronize multiple apps at the same time? Giant pain in the ass. Even simple things like loading a file in a JavaScript browser thing is a pain in the butt because it takes a certain amount of time to load that file. And while it's loading, there is no simple way of just waiting for it to end. You know, like you could do back in the old days. If you're running a program in Node on the server side of things, the file system blocks until that file is loaded, but not so with the web. And if you want to make efficient use of your CPU resources, you need to be thinking in terms of threads and responses and reactions. At least these days, you can do that. Back in the old days, you would write a very fast and efficient coroutine that didn't have asynchronicity in it. That's because the machines were so much slower, and I think these days it's taken for granted that we have slow, well, more complicated sequencing mechanisms. While you could write something in assembly language or bare metal C and have it probably run 10 times faster than the equivalent code that people are writing today. Computers are so fast that you don't even notice that it's 10 times faster. There's very limited cases for doing that type of programming these days. So anyway, having done some JavaScript programming now for 3 years, I'm seeing like where the hangups are in our development process when we're just trying to write code that does something that requires a lot of waiting around and then reacting to something and then waiting for something to finish. So it's an extension of the system I had made called Unisys that was for our last web app project. And I think the new one's going to be cool because it'll not only combine our module system with it, with the lifecycle startup, it'll also combine shared state notification between React components and our own module system, and also be unified across the network if I set this up right. So any web app that connects to the Unisys network then can synchronize state automatically without us having to do anything else across the network. And that would be badass and allow us to write some of the educational stuff that we're prototyping much faster. It's one of the major bottlenecks that we have right now, just writing that kind of code and being able to test it. So I've gone over my 15-minute mark, but that's today's What's Up, Dave? Hope your day is going well. Tomorrow I will not be blogging or live streaming because it is a work day and I'll be focusing largely on code and not having this thing first thing in the morning, like with the live streams and talking about this stuff, is one way of keeping my brain more focused. I don't know if I sound more focused these days. I certainly feel more focused than I have in quite some time. And that is due to the changed diet, I think. But we shall see. At least a week needs to go by and another week. 2 weeks, I think it will take for me to come to come to a conclusion whether or not having the diet change and controlling my blood sugar is having a real effect on my brain clarity, or if it's just a placebo effect. It's if just the novelty of doing something different is waking my brain up, because I know that tends to happen. Nick, that's it for now. Thanks for watching and have a good Thursday. I'll see you on Friday. Oops, wrong button.